Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. They say the first thing a blind man does after regaining his sight is throw away his cane. I had taken care of my paralyzed husband, John Miller, for 40 years. But the first thing he did after relying on my family's support to regain the use of his legs was push me into oncoming traffic. Right before I lost consciousness under the wheels of a speeding truck, I saw him holding the woman he had loved but could never have, his white moonlight, Emily. His voice, soft in a way I had never heard before in my entire life with him, gently called her name. Emily, I can finally throw away the disgusting cane I've used for 10 years. I can love you openly now. And then I opened my eyes again, back on the day John Miller came to propose. He had bought a television set, but instead of stopping at my house, he turned and went straight to the neighbor's, Emily Parker's home. My father was furious and wanted to storm out and stop it, insisting he would win back the proposal for me. But I remained calm and said, "Dad, I'm not going to marry John Miller. I want to marry the successful man who proposed before, David Carter." "Oh, that John Miller. How dare he propose to someone else? Does he think the White family will just stand by?" My father shouted, fuming with rage, and his voice snapped me out of my daze. I opened my eyes to see the familiar sight of my childhood home and my father, his hair still dark, not yet streaked with gray. I couldn't stop the tears from streaming down my face. Just a moment ago, the man I had loved for a lifetime had pushed me into the path of a truck. His voice, full of resentment, still echoed in my ears. "If it weren't for saving you, Lily, I wouldn't have become disabled. If I had chosen Emily back then, I'd have had a great life by now. Why did I waste so many years in a wheelchair?" He had wrapped his arms around Emily, his face twisted in bitterness, but the very legs I had massaged for decades were now strong again. He could walk. After the harsh screech of brakes, my body was thrown into the air. But what I never expected was that I'd be reborn back to the very day John was supposed to propose to me. Only this time he didn't. Instead, he turned and proposed to Emily Parker, the daughter of the textile factory director. Could it be? He was reborn too. "Lily, my sweet girl, don't cry," my father said with teary eyes. "So what if he's a mail carrier with a state job? Don't worry. Even if I have to crash the engagement, I'll help you win him back." His large, calloused hand trembled as he patted my shoulder. Then he grabbed a bamboo stick from the corner and rushed to the door. I quickly reached out and grabbed his arm. "Dad, I don't want this engagement anymore." He stopped suddenly, looking back at me in disbelief. If John Miller thinks Emily's family background can help him more than mine, then he's not worth it. I'm not going to cling to a man who would throw away love for the sake of his future. My father stood frozen, slowly lowering the bamboo stick, his eyes full of doubt and confusion. "Lily, are you thinking straight? Didn't you used to say you'd only marry John Miller?" A wave of bitterness washed over me. In my previous life, I had invested everything in John Miller, convinced he was the best man in the world. But after living through a lifetime of hardship and betrayal, I realized that the promising young man I fell in love with had long since changed beyond recognition. I lowered my gaze and softly replied, "Maybe I just didn't understand back then. But now that I've grown up, I want to choose someone better for myself." I paused, then added, "Didn't David Carter, the wealthy man, send someone to propose before? Just go tell them I trust your judgment, and I'm willing to marry him." As I said this, the anger slowly faded from my father's face. But when he heard David Carter's name, his eyes widened in disbelief. David had always been known throughout the neighboring towns as an unruly man. But he had a clever mind for business, and using that talent, he became the first millionaire in our area. He didn't look like someone who was made for a steady domestic life. In fact, in my past life, the Carter family had sent a matchmaker with a very generous dowry. But back then, I only had eyes for John Miller, and thought David was nothing more than a flashy nouveau riche. However, during the 40 years I spent taking care of John, David Carter, once a wild youth, became one of the first to benefit from the economic reform, turning into a respected entrepreneur in our region. Now I've come back with a second chance. I finally saw through it all. People crave wealth like it's heaven on earth. My father was still trying to process what I had said. After a long pause, he hesitantly asked, Lily, are you really sure about David Carter? His reputation isn't exactly great, you know. I gave him a small smile, a bit of peace showing through. Dad, can a reputation feed you? John Miller had a good reputation too. But that didn't stop him from stepping all over me. David may not have the best name, but at least he's rich. And from what I've heard, he's got real business sense. Most importantly, in my last life, I overheard something. David Carter built a massive business empire and became a well-known entrepreneur, but he never got married. Some say there was always a woman in his heart, someone he loved but could never have. My father went quiet. He was a simple farmer, but he loved me deeply. After hearing my explanation, even though he still had some doubts about David compared to John Miller's betrayal, it suddenly didn't seem so unacceptable. He let out a long sigh like he was making a big decision. As long as you won't regret it later, I'll go talk to them. I'll find that Carter boy right now. My daughter's a gem. If David Carter dares to mistreat you, I'll make him pay. With that, Dad stormed out, watching his back as he rushed off. Warmth welled up in my chest. As for John Miller, he could rot with Emily Parker for all I cared. They better stay far away from me. If they dared come near again, I'd settle both old and new scores. News that I had agreed to marry David Carter spread through White Village like wildfire. The whole place was in an uproar. The gossip-loving aunties had found fresh meat and wasted no time digging in. Oh my goodness, did you hear? That girl Lily from the White family turned down John Miller and is marrying David Carter instead. No way. John's a postal worker. That's a stable government job. And what's David got besides a few stinky dollars? I bet Lily did something shameful to John, and that's why he dumped her. He ran off to propose to the factory director's daughter instead. She's just giving up now, marrying whoever will take her. All this nasty gossip made its way to my father's ears and to John Miller's too. That day, while I was hanging laundry in the courtyard, John came stomping up to the house. Lily White, are you seriously going to marry that loser David Carter? He asked, standing at the gate like he still had some claim over me. His gaze was arrogant, his expression dripping with condescension and smugness. Wake up, will you? What's David got besides some dirty money? You think he can give you a real life? I looked at his pretentious, self-righteous face and felt nothing but disgust. John Miller, are you sick or something? Who I marry is none of your damn business. My words hit him like a slap. His face twisted, green one second, pale the next. After a moment of choking on his own pride, he finally managed to squeeze out, I'm only saying this for your own good. I can't just stand by and watch you throw yourself into a pit of fire. You won't be happy with someone like David Carter. I know you're still mad at me, but Emily is the one I truly love. Her father's the director of the textile factory. He can give me a better future. You have to understand that. He took a few steps closer, lowering his voice. If you regret this now and just say the word, once I'm settled in the city, I'll make sure to look after you too. I slowly lifted my head and looked at the face I had once adored, the face I had spent a lifetime serving. All I saw now was a stranger. Ridiculous, pathetic. We had both come back from the dead. So where did he get the confidence to think I'd choose him again to be his housemaid for another 40 years? I spoke calmly. John Miller, there's nothing between us anymore. Who I marry, whether I'm happy or not, is none of your concern. Don't come bothering me again, or I won't be so polite next time. He must have been shocked by how firm I was. Unable to accept defeat, he blurted out, Lily White, don't forget who saved you back then. My heart sank. The light in my eyes dimmed instantly. So it was true. He had been reborn too. Before I could react, my father's voice thundered from inside the house. Who the hell is making a ruckus at my doorstep? Suddenly, a basin of ice-cold foot-washing water came crashing down from above, splashing squarely across John Miller's face. He was soaked to the bone and let out a shrill yelp, completely flustered. My dad stormed out of the house with the empty basin still in his hands, face full of fury. Pointing straight at John, he shouted, "Oh, it's you. You ungrateful little bastard. What? You still think a toad can marry a swan? Running your mouth, claiming you're here to see my daughter Lily. You ever look in the mirror to see what kind of trash you really are? Get lost. And if you dare show your face here again, I'll break your damn legs. John's face flushed red, then pale, completely humiliated. He was shaking with rage, pointing at my dad for a good while, but too choked up to say a word. In the end, all he could do was stomp his foot and growl through clenched teeth. Just wait. I, John Miller, will make it big one day, and you'll all regret this. I watched his soaking wet figure storm off, and then turned to look at my dad. Standing there, fierce as ever, ready to protect his daughter. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. Dad chuckled too, flashing a bright white smile. Sweetheart, as long as I'm around, no one's going to bully you. I nodded firmly, eyes misting over. Soon after, David Carter arrived with a matchmaker to propose formally. The fanfare was enough to shake all of White Village. The entire neighborhood came out to see the spectacle, crowding 3 deep around our courtyard. 4 young men dressed in sharp, clean shirts rode in on brand new bicycles. 2 of them carried a large red lacquered trunk said to be filled with clothes and fabric for every season. The other 2 brought cigarettes, wine, sugar, tea, and 2 fat red feathered roosters. David himself wore a crisp Jongshan suit and held a small box wrapped in red paper. He had that signature mix of charm and streetwise confidence on his face, but his eyes were serious, focused intently on me with a touch of nervous anticipation. The same gossiping aunties who had been mocking me just days before stretched their necks to gawk, their eyes now full of envy and jealousy. My father, overwhelmed by the generous betrothal gifts covering our entire courtyard, was moved to tears. Pride lit up his face, finally washing away the gloom that had hung over him for days. Just then, a small commotion stirred outside the crowd. It was John Miller and Emily Parker. They just happened to be passing by. Emily was dressed to impress, wearing a trendy floral dress with her hair styled in big waves. She clung tightly to John's arm, who wore a slightly worn white shirt, and tried to put on the air of a rising star. Looking over the gifts in our courtyard and at David Carter, Emily sneered and muttered loud enough for others to hear. This is it, and they call this impressive. Then she added loudly, just the other day, John bought me a black and white TV that cost over $100. Once we get our place in the city, we'll be watching TV every day. She exaggerated the words. Get our place in the city. Like she was afraid no one would hear it. John, meanwhile, just stood there with a smug, satisfied look as if waiting to see me fall apart. My father's face darkened instantly. David noticed the sudden shift in atmosphere. The smirk on his face disappeared, and he took a step forward. Mr. Miller, Miss Parker, today is the day I'm formally proposing to Lily. I appreciate your passing interest. Then he turned back, took the red-wrapped box from one of his men, and held it carefully with both hands as he presented it to my father. Sir, this is a token of my sincerity. Dad opened the box and gasped. Inside was a thick stack of freshly minted bills. Holy hell, he muttered. $2,000, he was stunned. David, this is way too much. I can't accept this. 2,000 yuan. A regular worker's monthly wage was only 30 or 40 yuan. This was an enormous gesture. David Carter's generosity was no joke. The White family girl really struck gold this time. She's going to be a rich lady now. Isn't that the truth? What's a government housing unit compared to this? Lily White is truly blessed. We can only envy her now. The villagers watching the scene couldn't stop exclaiming in awe. David Carter, however, only had eyes for me. His gaze was gentle but resolute. Lily, he said sincerely, I know my reputation hasn't been great, and I must have caused you and your father some worry. He paused, took a deep breath like he was making a major decision. This is everything I've saved over the years through my business, and I've also brought the deed to a small house in the city. I brought the original document with me. As he spoke, he pulled out an oil paper-wrapped envelope from inside his jacket. Inside was an official property deed stamped with a red seal. The crowd of neighbors went wild. John Miller's eyes turned bloodshot as he stared at the red envelope. Disbelief written all over his face. No way, Lily White. How could you possibly land a man like him? In John's mind, someone he had discarded like me should have spent her life beneath his shadow. In this new life, he believed he was the chosen one, the star of his own storybook. The only way it made sense was if I remained beneath his feet, gazing up at him in admiration while he lived happily ever after with his white moonlight, Emily Parker. That was how it was supposed to be. But now I had somehow married someone far more impressive than him, and gained with ease everything he had only dreamed of. John Miller, I said coldly. Who I choose to marry is none of your business. He looked like he wanted to say more, but I didn't even glance at him. The neighbors, on the other hand, didn't hold back. John, don't tell me you're jealous just because Lily found herself a good match. Weren't you the one who dumped her to go propose to the textile factory director's daughter? It's too late to regret it now. Didn't the Parker family already accept your betrothal gifts? Seriously, you're the one who threw Lily away. What are you so bitter about now? I'm telling you, the more I look at David Carter, the more I like him. If I were a few years younger, I'd want to marry him myself. What a fine young man. Didn't you all say Lily wrong, John? Now it's clear John just didn't know a good thing when he had it. Lily is the local beauty around these parts. Honestly, she and David Carter make a perfect pair. John and Emily's expressions were a sight to behold. I didn't miss a thing. I saw that flash of jealousy and resentment in Emily's eyes before she dug her nails sharply into John's arm. But John didn't even react. He just stood there, lost in his own world, his face shifting from red to pale to dark. In the end, he pressed his lips together and said nothing. While I was savoring John's priceless reaction, David suddenly dropped to one knee in front of me. I, David Carter, swear before all the elders and villagers today, as long as Lily agrees to marry me, every cent I earn from this day forward will be given to her to manage. I'll love her with all I have for the rest of my life and never take another woman. His voice rang out strong and clear, and the courtyard fell silent. I looked at David Carter, overwhelmed by emotion. In my last life, I had saved and sacrificed for John Miller for decades, only to be cast aside like an old shoe. Now standing before me was a man willing to hand over everything he owned just for me to say yes. How could I possibly turn that down? I took a deep breath and met his gaze. With a soft smile I said, I do. The tension vanished from David's face, replaced by pure uncontainable joy. He almost leapt into the air in excitement. As the crowd buzzed with gasps and chatter, John Miller and Emily Parker slinked away, completely deflated. When Emily left, her eyes were full of hatred and bitter unwillingness. She shot me a venomous glare, as if she wanted to burn a hole through me. David and I were soon married, just as planned. He held the wedding banquet at Friendship Hotel, the only open-air venue in the city back then. It was the kind of grand event most people couldn't even dream of. He even rented 2 Liberation brand trucks to bring all the family and neighbors from the village who wanted to attend. It was glorious and unforgettable. On our wedding day, David stood by my side, his eyes overflowing with love and satisfaction. We had 20 full banquet tables. The feast was lavish with every delicacy imaginable. The guests who came to the wedding were amazed beyond words. My dad couldn't stop grinning. He was glowing with pride, beaming from ear to ear. To him, this was the highest honor. But just as we were making a toast during the wedding, John Miller showed up uninvited. His hair was slicked back with greasy pomade, obviously styled with care. He waited for a moment when David was chatting with other guests and slipped over to me. Lowering his voice he said, Lily, this is your last chance. If you leave with me right now, I'll pretend none of this ever happened. He looked at me with burning eyes, like he truly believed I would come to my senses at the last second and choose him. The man with the brighter future. I looked at John's overconfident face and burst out laughing. He must still think I couldn't survive without him. How ridiculous. Without a word, I glanced at David. He instantly understood. He came over and took my hand, holding it tightly. With a playful but firm smile, he turned to John and said, Mr. Miller, today's my wedding day. Are you here to cause a scene? His voice wasn't loud, but it carried real weight. My wife has excellent taste. No way she'd be interested in someone like you. John's face turned an angry shade of red. His whole body shook with rage. He slammed his wine glass onto the table with a loud crack, splashing alcohol everywhere. Guests turned to stare. What the hell are you doing, John? Emily Parker burst in from the doorway, clearly furious. I've been looking for you all morning. You said you were out delivering mail, and here you are at someone else's wedding. Are you regretting proposing to me now? Her voice trembled like she was on the verge of tears. Suddenly, all eyes turned on the two of them, as if their stares could burn right through their skin. "Lily White, just you wait." John snapped at me with clenched teeth. Then he grabbed Emily by the arm and stormed off in disgrace. And just like that, the ugly little sideshow came to an end. David turned to me again, his usual playful grin returning to his face. "Babe, don't let people like that ruin your mood." He leaned in and whispered with a smug little tone. "So how'd I do just now? Wasn't I cool?" Looking at his goofy, proud face, all the irritation I'd felt just moments before melted away. After the wedding, David and I settled into a peaceful, sweet life, just like he promised. He handed over every cent he earned to me and treated me with nothing but love and care. He didn't fool around anymore like he used to. Instead, he started getting serious about managing the family business. Meanwhile, John really did start to rise in the world, just like he swore he would. With the knowledge he brought back from the future, he used his position as a mail carrier to quietly start a gray market side hustle, buying and reselling pirated tapes imported from coastal ports. It wasn't long before he made his first pile of cash. He bought Emily new clothes and even splurged on a brand new motorcycle. The two of them rode around the village every day, showing off like royalty. People started calling them a power couple. Emily, giddy with pride, bragged to anyone who would listen about how capable and successful John was. But her words always carried a smug undertone, each one aimed at me. She never missed a chance to imply that I'd been blind back then, that I'd lost out. Sometimes John would deliberately ride his loud, sputtering motorcycle past the house David and I shared. He'd yell at the top of his lungs about how much money he'd made that day, or what fancy thing he just bought for Emily. "Lily, you see this? This is what a good life looks like. If you had chosen me, all of this could have been yours." I never took his childish bragging seriously. I just smiled quietly because I knew his little showboating meant nothing in the grand scheme of things. The real opportunities were still ahead. Using the vague memories I had from my past life and my growing sense of future business trends, I quietly began investing our family savings into the newly booming foreign trade business. David trusted me completely. Whatever I suggested, he followed without question. Together, we made several trips south to Shenzhen and Guangzhou, scouting out opportunities and meeting with a few reliable Hong Kong traders. We took advantage of the information gap between the mainland and Hong Kong at the time, and with our capital advantage, made a fortune off our first foreign trade order from a local street committee. The profits were overwhelming, but we always kept a low profile. We never bragged or made a show of it. So to outsiders, David Carter still looked like the same idle heir, who clung to a few dead assets. And I was the poor woman who had married a man with no ambition. Whenever we saw the smug, arrogant John Miller, David and I would exchange glances. In each other's eyes, there was a flicker of unspoken amusement. "Go ahead, John. Keep jumping around. The real show hasn't even started yet." And just as expected, the good times didn't last for him. New policies were rolled out in the city. Regulations on individual reselling and gray market activities began tightening. John's tape reselling business started hitting snags. His supply lines grew unstable, and even high prices couldn't guarantee inventory. More competitors entered the scene, squeezing his profits further. But John didn't see the danger. He was still riding the high of his early success, convinced that his rebirth gave him foresight to solve anything. He thought these were just temporary bumps in the road. At a neighboring village gathering one evening, drunk on rice wine, he jabbed a finger in David's face and loudly mocked him. "Look at you sitting on your family's money, going nowhere. A real man should get out there, take risks, build something big like me." Then he turned to me, eyes full of both pity and pride. "Lily, if you had chosen me back then, you'd be living the good life now, eating well, dressing fancy. You really missed out." The people around us laughed and joined in, praising John for being young, ambitious, and business savvy. David was publicly humiliated, but when he looked at me, he held his tongue. I knew John was nothing but a paper tiger, all bark, no bite. Let him gloat while he still could. It wouldn't be long before he'd be the one crying. In our past life, the only reason John had managed to live relatively well was because I had always been behind him, giving him ideas, planning carefully, making every penny count. Without me, his little tricks and schemes wouldn't carry him far. Not in a volatile decade like the 1980s where every opportunity was laced with both risk and reward. Sure enough, not long after, I heard whispers in the village. Emily Parker had started putting serious pressure on John. Emily was vain and materialistic, and she burned through money like paper. The little bit John had made early on was nowhere near enough to satisfy her. She nagged him every day for a bigger gold ring, trendier clothes, and imported makeup. She even demanded he buy them a spacious new apartment in the city with a large balcony to keep up appearances. John was overwhelmed, stretched thin, and totally drained. His profit margins were shrinking fast, and cash flow was getting tight, but his pride wouldn't let him admit it. To maintain his image, he started cutting corners and sourcing from shady suppliers, dipping into gray market goods, hoping for a quick buck to silence Emily and keep showing off to the public. What he didn't realize was that he was digging his own grave. When the city held its very first trade fair, John and Emily leapt at the chance to make a splash. They rented a tiny booth, dressed to impress, and laid out a bunch of trendy goods they'd sourced from all kinds of places, hoping the foot traffic would bring in a windfall. But what they didn't expect was to run into me and David at the fair. Well, if it isn't Mr. and Mrs. Carter," John said, eyes lighting up when he spotted me in a tailored blazer. His back straightened and he walked right over to us. "Came to check out the trade fair, huh? I guess you two wanted to see what real business looks like. This place isn't for regular folks like you. It's for big players. Hope you brought enough money. Nothing here's cheap." I couldn't help but laugh out loud. What John didn't know was that David and I weren't just visitors. We'd been invited as official representatives of the city's emerging private trade sector. Our booth was one of the largest in a prime location and professionally curated. But clearly, John hadn't figured that out. As David and I were preparing to leave, John suddenly blocked my path. He grabbed a cassette tape from his booth and tried to shove it into my hands. "Lily, I've said it before. Only I, John Miller, can give you the kind of life people envy. Take it. This is top-quality stuff fresh from Hong Kong." "John Miller," I said calmly. "Are you still dreaming?" I frowned and slapped away John Miller's outstretched hand. The cassette tape he was holding flew from his grip and shattered on the ground. "Lily White, you're unbelievable. Do you even know how much that tape costs? Pay for it." John yelled loud enough to draw attention from the nearby trade fair attendees. Just then, one of the event organizers, hearing the commotion, hurried over. John's eyes lit up, and he quickly put on a pitiful expression, stepping into the man's path. "Sir, these two intentionally broke my merchandise. They're causing trouble at the fair." The organizer furrowed his brow, clearly annoyed. Sensing an opportunity, John pushed harder. "We paid money to be here," he insisted. "You have to make them compensate me. At least 100. No, 1,000 yuan." But the man completely ignored him. As he broke through the gathering crowd and walked up to David and me, his stern face instantly softened into a respectful smile. "There you are," he said warmly, reaching out a hand. "We've been expecting you. Must have been a long trip back from Hong Kong." I smiled politely and nodded. "Thank you for inviting us. It's an honor to ride the wave of this trade fair." The man, Mr. Chin, laughed heartily. "You're being modest. You and Mr. Carter are well-known representatives of the city's rising private trade scene. Your success is admired by all. Your special booth has already been arranged. Please follow me." At that, John's jaw nearly cracked from how hard he was clenching it. As David and I walked toward our booth, the curious crowd trailed behind us, eager to see what the trade fair's star couple had brought. Even John and Emily couldn't help but follow. When they saw our booth lined with officially imported goods, they were stunned. There were sleek, precision-engineered imported wristwatches, elegant, affordable synthetic fabrics that were even cheaper than local Dacron, but far more stylish. All of it was rare and sought after in the mainland market at the time. "This can't be real," John muttered, his eyes wide as saucers. Emily's jealousy flared instantly, her eyes locked on the gleaming watch on my wrist, and for a moment, it looked like she might lunge to rip it off me. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, David and I confidently introduced our products to customers and event officials. Their praise came quickly, followed by eager purchases. Our booth soon became the hottest spot at the fair, packed wall-to-wall with interested buyers. In contrast, John and Emily's tiny, sad little stall looked even more pathetic than before. John stared at our displays, his eyes burning with jealousy and disbelief. He couldn't understand how I, someone he had looked down on, had transformed into a polished, successful businesswoman. For the first time, a flicker of fear and envy appeared in his expression. After the fair, I thought we were finally rid of John Miller. But during a moment when David had stepped away to speak with the organizers, John suddenly approached me again, unable to let go. "Lily White, tell me the truth. Where did you get all this stuff? Did you remember something too?" His tone darkened as he looked at me, eyes swirling with suspicion and confusion. I sneered inwardly but kept my face calm. "What are you talking about, John? I don't understand." Seeing me deny it only made him more certain. He gritted his teeth and leaned in, voice lowered to a threatening whisper. "Don't play dumb. I know you've been reborn too. If I hadn't saved you back then, you'd be dead. And now that you've climbed up the ladder by hooking up with David Carter, you think you can just cast me aside? Not so fast." His voice grew more aggressive. "That trade business of yours? I want half. No. Hand over the whole thing or I'll expose you. I'll tell everyone what you are. That you're a freak who came back from the dead." Looking at his greedy, hideous face, I felt nothing but disgust. "John Miller," I said coldly. "You're sick and there's no cure for you." I shook his hand off and turned to leave. Enraged by my rejection, he raised his hand as if to strike me. But before he could touch me, a strong hand shot out and clamped down on his wrist. David Carter had returned at some point. His face was dark as thunder as he glared at John. "What do you think you're doing?" David's voice was ice cold. David's grip was iron tight. John Miller winced in pain, baring his teeth, but he couldn't shake him off. "Let go of me, David Carter. This is between me and Lily. It has nothing to do with you." David didn't even flinch. "Lily is my wife. Anything that concerns her concerns me." He flung John's arm away without another word, then turned to me, gently placing his hand on my shoulder. His voice softened. "Come on, Lily. Let's go. He's not worth our time." I nodded. John stood frozen, his face stormy as he watched us walk away together. His whole body trembled with rage. What he didn't notice was Emily Parker standing just a short distance away, staring at my wristwatch with a complicated and envious look. But it wasn't just the watch she envied. It was the way David cared for me, down to every last detail. Then came another round of sweeping policy changes, stricter and harsher than anyone had anticipated. The city began a major crackdown on speculation and unlicensed business activity. Many who had made a little money skirting the rules now sensed real danger. They pulled out, froze operations, and chose to wait and see. But not John. He stubbornly believed this was no different from last time, just a bluff. He thought as a reborn man, his knowledge of the future would shield him from any real risk. He even mocked those who retreated as cowards. "The bold get rich, the timid starve," he scoffed. "You people will never make it big with your fear." But I saw something different in those scattered signals. Something serious was coming. I immediately warned David to offload any stock that could fall into regulatory gray zones. We had to act fast. We also needed to redirect our profits from foreign trade into more stable investments. As always, David trusted me completely. "Whatever you say, babe." We moved quickly, clearing out all sensitive inventory at low prices. Yes, we lost some profits, but we avoided far greater losses. Then we bought a 2-story home with a garden in the heart of the county town. Through our connections with Hong Kong merchants, we also secured a nearly new used Toyota sedan from the port city. News of our home and car purchase spread through White Village like wildfire. Everyone was talking that Carter boy hit the jackpot marrying Lily. She's a lucky charm. When John heard the news, he was too stunned to speak. David Carter, that useless troublemaker, where did he get that kind of money? Meanwhile, John could barely scrape together enough to buy Emily a decent wristwatch. Watching me live a life far beyond what he ever imagined, one he once believed I could never achieve without him, shattered what little superiority John had left. He began suffering from insomnia. At night, memories of our past kept creeping in. The days when he was crippled and helpless, and I stayed by his side day and night, feeding him, washing him, pushing his wheelchair into the sun. He remembered how, when we were at our lowest, I racked my brain to come up with small business ideas just to keep our family afloat. Regret started eating away at him. He wondered, if he hadn't been blinded by Emily's family background, if he had truly cherished me, would he now be living a life like David's? As he wrestled with his regrets, Emily came to him again, asking for money. "John, I saw a new watch at the department store. It looks just like the one Lily wore at the trade fair. Buy it for me." John bit back his frustration. "How much?" 2,000. 2,000 yuan. "What kind of damn watch costs that much?" he snapped. There was no way he could afford it. The irritation and remorse he'd been suppressing finally boiled over. "Why are you always comparing yourself to Lily? She's smart. She helps her husband build a business. And you? All you do is spend and nag." He lashed out at Emily, calling her vain, greedy, and completely indifferent to how hard things were for him. But Emily wasn't one to stay quiet. She broke down crying on the spot. "And what about you? Why don't you look at how David treats Lily? He buys her gold rings and designer purses. You're just a worthless, broke loser. I should never have married you in the first place." That fight ended with both of them storming off. Furious, John sent Emily back to her parents' house without a second thought. And then the iron fist of the city finally came down. A massive enforcement campaign swept across the region, cracking down hard on speculative trading and illegal business practices. Panic spread like wildfire. Everyone was on edge, and fear was thick in the air. News about John came quickly. Because his operation had expanded too recklessly and his supply chains were mostly unregulated, he became a prime target in the investigation. Almost overnight, all the stockpiled goods in his warehouse were seized and confiscated. Every penny he had invested evaporated. His entire cash flow collapsed. He didn't just lose everything, he fell deep into debt. The business partners who once called him brother now avoided him like the plague. And the final blow, Emily. When she found out he was in trouble, she didn't even show her face. She quietly emptied the last of his remaining cash and a few pieces of jewelry, then disappeared without a trace. She left him only a scrap of paper. "Take care of yourself. Don't come looking for me again." John was completely stunned. He had spent this entire second life scheming and calculating. How had it all ended in betrayal and ruin? He couldn't understand why, even with knowledge of the future, he had failed to rise. Wandering the streets in a daze, he stumbled aimlessly. That's when our brand new Toyota sedan rolled to a smooth stop beside him. The door opened, and David Carter stepped out of the driver's seat, glowing with confidence. He walked around the car and opened the passenger side door with gentlemanly flair. He offered his hand to help me out. I stepped down with a warm smile on my face, saying something to David as we chatted and laughed. The sight pierced John like a knife. He instinctively tried to hide, but it was too late. We had already seen him. David saw him too. John opened his mouth, trying to say something to me, maybe to greet me, maybe to beg, but no words came. He looked at me, then at David, handsome, successful, and completely devoted to me. Then he looked down at his own broken, defeated self. A wave of shame and regret surged through him. In the end, he said nothing. He could only watch as David wrapped his arm around my waist, and together we walked into an upscale restaurant nearby. Only then did John finally understand what he had truly lost. He'd been given a second chance at life and had destroyed it with his own hands. The woman he had abandoned, discarded like she meant nothing, had become the version of herself he once dreamed of and secretly envied. Now regret came too late. That night, John drank himself into oblivion at a tiny roadside bar. Alone, he cursed the heavens for being unfair, cursed Emily for being heartless, and cursed himself for being blind and foolish. He collapsed drunk on the street. And in the dark of night, a freight truck, its visibility limited, failed to see him lying at the edge of the road. It rolled directly over his legs. Fate, in its cruel irony, had come full circle. In our previous life, he lost his legs saving me. In this one, it was entirely his own doing. John's life was swallowed in darkness once again. Meanwhile, the foreign trade business David and I had built grew stronger by the day. We soon became one of the most talked about entrepreneurial couples in the county. Thanks to his hard work and my guidance, David completely shed his old reputation as a reckless heir, and was now known far and wide as a brilliant young businessman. His love and devotion to me became legendary across villages. People everywhere said I had good judgment, marrying a man like David. And every time, David would simply smile and say, "Without Lily, I'd be nothing." As for John Miller, crippled and drowning in debt, his reputation was destroyed. He couldn't even land a proper job. He scraped by doing odd work at low-end factories just to keep food on the table. The arrogant, high-flying man he once was had vanished, leaving behind only defeat and despair. One drizzly afternoon, David and I drove out to inspect a garment factory we had recently invested in. As soon as the car stopped in front of the factory gate, a familiar figure caught my attention. John Miller, soaked from head to toe, was hobbling out the gate on a pair of crutches, struggling with every step. When he saw us, John froze for a moment. Then slowly, a mix of emotions flickered across his face: shame, regret, and a deep, quiet humility. He hesitated for a few seconds, then gathered his courage and hobbled over toward our car, dragging one leg with each painful step. Just as I was about to get out, he stepped forward and blocked my path. "Lily." His voice was hoarse and dry, almost cracking, tinged with desperation. "I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have treated you that way." He lowered his head, not daring to meet my eyes. "Emily, she lied to me," he muttered. "Is there any chance we could go back to the way things were?" He finally looked up. His eyes were filled with pleading, heavy with hope and sorrow. "I became disabled because I was trying to save you. Remember?" He tried to summon sympathy using the last thread of connection from our past life, the moment he thought would bind me to him forever. I looked at him calmly, looked at that face, now sallow and drawn from long-term malnutrition, the eyes dulled by hopelessness. But inside I felt nothing. No hatred, no anger, not even a ripple of emotion, just distant politeness. Before I could even speak, David stepped forward and gently positioned himself between us, shielding me behind him with quiet firmness. "John Miller," David said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a calm finality. "My wife is pregnant. She's very happy now. She doesn't need anyone disturbing her peace. Whatever happened in the past, good or bad, it's already over. You made your choice. You live with it." Then he turned, wrapped an arm around my shoulders, and said with a soft smile, "Come on, Lily. It's raining. Let's not catch a cold." I nodded and let him guide me through the factory gates. Behind us, John stood alone in the rain, watching us walk away together. His back, once proud and straight, slowly slumped forward. Rain and tears streamed down his face, indistinguishable from one another. And in that moment he finally understood. Some people, once you lose them, are gone for good. And what he had lost was his entire,